Okay, we are live on Never Stop Dreaming podcast. I have my co-host Kimberly. I'm sorry, is the last name Keaton?
It is. Yep.
Okay, I pronounced it right. Thank you so much for your time today. And so in this episode, I want to get to a little bit of the nitty gritty and the downright details of what I think, especially since a little before the pandemic, I think there's something that's kind of been on a lot of, I would say, millennials and baby boomers' minds is real estate. And so with real estate, today's topic will be covering a little bit about maybe like an intro to apartments and what that world is like. So Miss Kimberly, how did you get started initially?
So I got started back in 2008, and I wasn't necessarily looking to go into real estate. I'd had a pretty good corporate career, and blew it up. To be honest, I walked away from it. I thought I'm gonna just go start a business, which is a lot more work than I realized for sure. And failed miserably at my first business venture. I don't regret it for a bit though. And in that, I came across a real estate education program, and I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool. My grandparents had some rentals, not a lot, nothing fancy, but it took care of them. And I got into some education, and through that, made friends. And that just kind of took off from there. We just started, one friend in particular, we just had a lot of good synergies, and he loved to buy stuff and I loved to manage stuff, and we just were a really, really good fit. So kind of grew from there.
Okay, so you got started in '08. So what was your first deal like, if you could remember back on like the intricate details, and like how did your first deal come about?
So the first deal came about because really he was acquiring property, he was negotiating on it, and I came in as operations. And so we probably had at that point in time maybe 4 or 5 properties between 6 and 20 units in Memphis. And so I was just jumping right in to manage, and these were like heavy value adds with a lot of just a lot of details. And so I just jumped right into it. And then I don't even honestly remember like what we picked up next. I do really remember when we picked up our 72 unit building. Wow. And I do really remember when we picked up our 182 unit building. And those were fun. Crazy.
Were those in Memphis as well, or?
Yeah, they were in Memphis as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So the 72 unit was vacant, and
wow,
a lot of the other stuff was vacant that we had acquired, but the 72 unit in particular was just so crazy because it was we got it for $60,000, and you go.
I'm sorry, I got to cut you off. So, how many units and for how much did you just say?
Yeah, it sounds like a really good story, but I'm going to add a star asterisk to your listeners to like proceed with great caution when you hear a deal like that. There's a reason it's a deal. But yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, 72 units for 60 grand. Nuts.
Wow. So this owner, so let's talk about this one a little bit, because that's quite interesting, because you just don't hear that every single day. So baby step. So we'll baby step it. So I mean, how was this acquired? Like, was this acquired through like a wholesaler? I mean, like, was it found, how was the deal found? Was it found through a wholesaler? Were you guys driving for dollars? Like,
Gotcha. Great question. So we both lived in California, and I still live in California. I tend to move a lot, but so we both lived in California, and so no driving for dollars. And we built, he had actually initiated the relationship with a local commercial realtor out there through the Marcus Millichap office.
mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing that I work with clients on today, and I see in real estate today, is that it's so much relationship based. And so everything we bought and sold in Memphis was through this gentleman. And so we would just, because we had built a reputation for being able to close, we would get a lot of looks at deals before they might go out to the rest of the marketplace. And the gentleman I was doing all this with, like, he's just one of his superpowers for sure is his charisma. And he just loves. Some people love to negotiate, and he loves to negotiate. So it's just a game for him. And so that he pulled that one together for us. But it was a massive, massive lift. The building had sat vacant for many years. Mm-hmm. And then that's kind of where my specialty comes in, like on the operational side of things. Like, I love to put things back together. I love a good value add. I love bringing the team together and getting all the, construction contracts in place and working with the city and looking for like special funding. So,
yeah.
That
sounds really interesting. So in the midst of all this, so you buy it for, you said, was it 60,000?
Yeah.
So you buy it for 60. How much do you have to go in on parts, labor, for construction? What was it?
One bite at a time. is how you go in. So the way this project was laid out, I specifically went because it was such a massive renovation. And I'm really big in networking, which is like how you and I met, right, and how I just find so many of my relationships in my entire life work like this. So I called up some friends and I was like, I need some help with some of this construction stuff in Memphis. And a friend of a friend referred me to another guy, and that's how I met Mike. And Mike is this twice retired head city building official. So like, he is institutional through and through. He talks the talk. He's construction. So I brought him in, and then our local property managers that we had. One of our main guys at that property management office came out of the construction industry, and he actually had built and been on the crews and been with the companies that had built several of the buildings we had acquired. So he was really familiar with this. I brought in my expert guy with construction to help me pull in the construction contracts and talk to the city. And we laid out a plan, because it's kind of a matter of capital. Like, this is not a beginner project. So anybody listening, this is not where you're going to get started unless you're just like super ballsy, and which is cool. I'd say start with like a 5-plex that's been sitting vacant versus a 72 unit. But so we decided on that project, it was kind of an issue of capital and speed of construction and speed of lease up, because what you learn in multifamily is that you can, or at least what I learned in multifamily was that I can renovate a whole lot faster sometimes than I can lease up. And so you don't necessarily want to suddenly have 72 finished units, because there's kind of this stigma with a vacant building, and nobody wants to be the first person to live in a vacant building. It's just kind of creepy. Which I had never realized or thought about before, but it is kind of hard. So you got to go through this lease up phase, and you're given discounts. And so anyway, we we made a strategic decision from a capital standpoint and from a construction standpoint that there were 6 buildings on this site. So our plan was to just do a building at a time. And then that way it was a lot easier for us to just kind of carve it off from insurance for safety purposes and just kind of do 8 to 16 units at a time and sort of knock those out and then get them leased up and then do the next building. So one bite at a time.
So you went straight for, so did you initially skip single family homes or you and went straight to commercial or?
Totally skipped it.
Wow.
I tried, Curtis, I tried so hard. I mean, I have spent so much in my real estate education over the years. Like I don't tell my husband how much I've spent because it comes out of my income, not his. So he didn't pay for it. So he doesn't need to know. And it's all better that way. But yeah, I tried wholesaling. I did wholesale one house in St. Louis. That was the hardest $1,500 I have ever earned in my entire life. Wow. So I tried that. I tried to get into fix and flipping, but for me, I never could quite grasp like the whimsical nature of the market. And I like my numbers a little bit more concrete and a little less subject to somebody's personal preference on a flooring color. So I just never could get traction with single family homes. And so my background's been in project management. I've always run large projects. Wow. So like, I like operations. I like, I like things that are not so subjective. And I always felt like single family homes were kind of subjective.
Okay. So since COVID, what have you seen in the market thus far? Whether it's, tenants or, I understand in different states that there's different rules and everything, but what have you seen personally, and have you continued purchasing during COVID, or you just kind of played the waiting game?
Great question. So I have been active for probably about going on my 5th year now, where I consult with investors, helping them buy and acquire assets, is something that I do. And so I've been very, very, very active from that perspective all through COVID. Okay. And I personally was working on a project a motel project in Daytona Beach. And that was getting pulled together February of last year, right before COVID was about to descend upon us. And at that time, it was just like a little 22-unit building. It was right off the A1A, but it was a vacant building, which I'm super comfortable with because of the story I just told you. In fact, I called it my guy, Mike, who's retired since again. I was like, Mike, you want to come, can I get you out of retirement and let's go do a motel conversion in Daytona Beach? And he's like, yeah, can I visit? I had a single investor that was willing to put into the $2 million of capital, which was, that was pretty, which came from a relationship, from an introduction. And so we were pretty much at the point to put in our EMD, and it was going to be hard from the get-go. We had already done all our due diligence. So in some places in the commercial world, it's a race through due diligence before you actually put your EMD down, because it's going to go hard the minute you put it down. So everybody is trying to vet the deal before they put their money in.
Just listening in, and for the newcomers, could you kind of go over EMD and due diligence just a little?
Yeah. No, please. You just slow me down anytime. So in the commercial process, just like in a single family home, you're going to put down an earnest money deposit. That's your down payment or your initial deposit to kind of lock up the contract. Okay. So in the commercial world, the most common earnest money deposit you're going to see out there is 1%. Now, in certain markets, that number is different. And you also, typically that money is refundable through the inspection period. And then potentially if you've got a financing contingency on it. But I definitely have seen in the market more and more frequently. And in certain markets, it's very common that the earnest money is hard, meaning non-refundable from the very beginning.
Okay.
And you may put far more than 1% down if you really, really, really want to come in with a strong offer and be competitive. And I'd say that's maybe 5% of the deals, maybe 10% of the deals out there. So the majority of them are like that. But in this situation, in Daytona, it was going to be like that. And so we were literally on the verge of putting that money in, and COVID was crashing. And even prior to COVID, I was trying to get my exit value on the project, because the entire plan was to renovate for a year so that we could have been launching about February, March of this year to catch the summer traffic, and then refinance out the private capital partner, because that's always in commercial real estate. A lot of these deals are put together with private investors.
Yeah.
And it's my philosophy and belief to get their capital investment back to them as quickly as possible so that their capital is not at risk. So go ahead.
I was going to say, and at what point, let's say somebody is raising private capital, at what point or what standard, like how many years out should, if for an investor, if they're looking to invest with you, how many years out should they look to receive a return on investment?
So, great question. And it really is going to kind of depend upon the project. So there's a lot of projects out there that investors are coming in, and there's large group syndication projects. So that's where there might be 50 investors that kind of pull their funds in together to go buy a 300 unit building.
Okay.
And there isn't necessarily a refinance event scheduled in that process for maybe 3 to 5 years. So the return of principal, that initial return of the capital that was invested, may not occur for that 3 to 5 year time period.
Okay.
So I tend to focus on smaller projects. I personally don't tend to focus on large syndications. I like a smaller group of maybe 3 to 5 investors. That's a lot more interactive. And we all, just kind of have a similar appetite for time horizons. So like I'm working on another motel project right now, and I'm looking at probably coming in with an all cash offer on it because I can get really favorable pricing that way.
Okay.
And I would want to refinance that one out within like 6 to 12 months to replace that capital.
And is that one vacant as well?
No, I don't. I actually, believe it or not, Curtis, I actually do not prefer vacant buildings, and they're not customary these days. For most people out there looking at deals, a vacant building is definitely a red flag right now in today's market.
Right.
Most buildings out there are going to be occupied, and they're going to be 100% occupied. Now, back to your COVID question, though, because it was real interesting. Like last year, watching everything take a big pause for about 3 months. Right. Financing changed dramatically. Reserve amounts that you needed to show and come in with went up dramatically. Everybody was kind of a little bit hesitant about what was happening. So deals, from what I saw and observed, and it was really actually pretty interesting. There was a lot of nationwide groups in the multifamily sector that came together and were tracking rent collections. And by and large across the country, rent collections stayed very strong all through COVID. Okay. The areas that struggled And there were definitely areas that struggled, but the areas that struggled were the ones that were more self-managed than third-party professionally managed.
Okay.
And buildings that had issues, or maybe that the managers didn't have strong relationships with the tenants. And there were definitely some markets where, like California, forget trying to evict. And actually, even in Connecticut, I have a client, this awesome guy, that I've helped pick up 2 6-unit buildings last year, and in Connecticut. And we came across one building that looked really good, but we walked away from it because everybody was delinquent, and Connecticut was absolutely shut down for evictions. Versus, I was working on a 43-unit building last year in the middle of COVID with my mom. And this was in Missouri, and all the eviction courts were still open. So everybody was paying. It really fluctuates by the market. But by and large, the professional managers, there's most of the buildings that we looked at and have looked at over the last 18 months have had paying tenants. The delinquencies and evictions have not been a massive issue. And honestly, everything's really opened up again. So like I just had a client close on a 24-unit building yesterday in Kansas. Yeah, it's so exciting. Nice. So it's her first. She's so excited. And there's no, everything's fine. There's no collection issues. The biggest issue right now, more than anything, is there's a lot of capital in the marketplace, a lot of money. So there's just not as much inventory, even in the commercial sector. So it's really, your relationships are going to make or break your deals right now.
Okay. So
yeah,
I'm going to, turn it up a bit. I want to
switch it up.
So, what's something about you that most people don't know?
Let's see here. So I'll give you I got a serious one and a fun one. So I'll give you the fun one. So I fostered 20 dogs with medical issues.
Wow.
With the local SPCA. So yeah, that's not a common one. That was awesome. It was so crazy fun. Like my husband and I still sit and reminisce stories about those. Some of them were crazier than others, but good dogs.
Never dull moment, huh?
No, never dull. Especially when they think they're the boss.
Yeah. So heading back into real estate. So I'm not going to keep you too long, but I got about probably 2 or 3 more just detail field questions. And so I'm a millennial. So for the millennials out there who are, and I know a lot are in Bitcoin and stocks right now, because that's kind of the hot topic. But for a millennial that's looking to get into real estate and start to venture or to look into the commercial sector, what would you recommend? How would you recommend them to go about getting started in the commercial field?
I would definitely recommend they get started. It may not seem quite as sexy as Bitcoin, but that's only because they don't maybe quite realize like all the other cool, really neat aspects about it. And like getting into commercial real estate doesn't have to just be about apartments. I mean, there's like so much interesting stuff going on with like motel conversions, or making like really cool boutique apartments. So if they're going to get in, I would say do it, first of all, like just get in there. Because it's more about the long term, I think, for the apartments and the multifamily and like the tax benefits. You guys got to offset your like gains on that Bitcoin. So you got to go out there and do some real estate, and you got to do some cost segregation studies, and you need to get some accelerated depreciation, my friends. You need some write-offs, because you're going to be making all those gains on the Bitcoin. So I say just go out do it. Pick a market you like to visit. Don't be afraid to partner up with some people that maybe have a little bit of experience. And definitely look for people that have some skills that are different than yours.
Okay. So, if are you on social media, and if so, where can people find you if they are looking for consultation in the field, in the real estate field?
Okay, so for anybody that's not a millennial, I'm on Facebook. I know y'all. I have not made it to TikTok yet, y'all. So I'm sorry, but you can find me on Facebook under Kimberly Keaton. You can find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is awesome. If you hit me up on Facebook and we don't share friends, and you look a little, there's some weird stuff on Facebook, but LinkedIn's great. Instagram's awesome. I'm on Instagram. And then I do have a good old fashioned website, just my name, Kimberly Keaton. So KEYTON, like a key that weighs a ton,
Okay.
.com. So they'd find me in all those places.
Nice. And so, and let's see, my second to last, give me 1 second. So let's say a millennial gets started. How much should they look into, how can a millennial fund their first deal? What are some, ways that they can, like, how much should they look to save, or how should they go about funding in deals?
Awesome question. So it really, it kind of depends. The easiest way to get into commercial real estate the fastest is to partner up with some other people, which means just making friends. You got to talk to people however you're going to talk to them. If you're going to like DM them or PM them or whatever you're going to do to like connect, you got to connect and figure out like who's got some cash. And then kind of pick your markets accordingly. Like if you can come up with, $50,000, that gives you, 3 times purchasing power, 3 or 4 times purchasing power. And then you just go look for some markets where you can pick something up like that. I've got a client that is picking up a 6-plex in just outside of Cleveland, Ohio for $150,000. So,
Wow.
but you ain't going to get that in Florida or California or Arizona. So then you got to go make some friends.
Arizona.
Yeah.
So I've seen four. I think they're like 4 and 5, about four units, and they're going, I think, if I'm not mistaken, for $1 million. I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that could
On the
certainly in Scottsdale.
On the real, yeah, I was gonna say on the listed market.
Yeah. Yeah. So, then it's kind of just finding those markets. So I would say just, you got to go make friends with, older people who maybe have some retirement accounts, because there's money sitting there waiting to be used. Or if they got a life insurance policy that they could maybe do some cash out loans against, because there's capital in some of those policies.
Okay.
And, so, make some friends with some older people that have like a couple of nickels to rub together. And then what's so cool is you partner up and go do a deal together.
Okay. So that sounds pretty simple. Well, thank you, Miss Kimberly, for your time. I really appreciate it. You're such a great help.
Well, it is my pleasure. And I'm just waiting for when you want to do some real estate.